Hello everybody and welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. This week on the show we're talking all about preparing for your live stream show, making sure that you're on topic, getting those assets organized and really making sure that you're giving your audience a good experience when you do go live. So wherever you happen to be watching from, let us know in the chat where you're watching from if you are watching live. I don't know why I keep trying to make this thing happen, but I'm going to do it again. Anyway, you can use hashtag Team Live, and if you're watching later on, you can always do hashtag Team Replay. But Sam, how's your week been? There's been a lot happening this week, I know.
It has been a crazy week, which all started with one of my favorite events of the entire year, which is not just Hanukkah, but Donut Party, which is an annual event that a good friend of mine hosts. He and his wife host, I should say. They're both friends. I don't know. Good friends host, where there's just tons and tons of donuts, like multiple dozens of donuts and just deli sandwiches as far as the eye can see. And just before we went to this thing, my daughter Iris was like, I'm tired. And so we got there, and for a good 2 hours, she just sat on the couch. I mean, at some point, somebody took her into the back and put Frozen 2 on, and she just vegged out and watched that. And minutes before we were ready to leave, she just started puking all over their stuff. And I was like, oh God, oh God. And then she proceeded to just be sick for 4 days. So that's been a majority of my week is caring for her and dealing with all of that. And then on top of that, she was supposed to have a belt test in karate, which thankfully she started feeling good 2 days ago. Took it easy kind of yesterday and actually did make it to the last possible class she could for her martial arts belt test. Spoiler alert, she is qualified for yellow belt and will be going to her ceremony this weekend, so we'll have that. On top of that, my in-laws just got into town, and I have been struggling to deal with my own procrastination and executive dysfunction to get this freelance video done for this brand integration for Cute Avalanche. And it's just as soon as we're done this, I'm going to be and back to that. And then on top of that, I got some really last minute voiceover work for a friend of mine that I was well, I could procrastinate and do that. That's easy. And then one final sort of thing is we started with Cute Avalanche. Speaking of Cute Avalanche, we started streaming to both YouNow and Instagram Live, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but not before we check in with John and how his week was. And your background disappeared.
I know, my background just disappeared. I have no idea what's going on
there. It is.
There. And it's interesting. I think StreamYard might be having some issues today, but that's okay. It's been a pretty good week. As you say, LinkedIn Live is a thing we'll talk about in a second, and that has been certainly fun to play with. I must admit, I'm not loving the Australian summer. I keep seeing all these snow scenes for Christmas, and normally I find those endearing, but right now I'm just melting. So I'm just doing what I can. Although I feel like the other thing that happened to you this weekend, it sounds like you had an insanely busy week, is that your internet connection got a bit of a glow up.
Yeah, I was coming home, I think it was from the donut party, and I saw a sign from one of my neighbors that said they got a fiber connection. I was like, oh my God, I've been waiting for this. We've been on the most expensive upgraded plan that I could have, and I immediately came home and looked it up, and I was like, it's half what we're paying for crappy internet, and it's amazing. I'm going to share a screenshot of this. I don't know, John, if you have it.
Yeah, I can put it up. Yeah.
This is from my Stream Deck that has my internet speed, and that's just in the garage off the mesh network. It's inside where the kitten cam is. It's 10x that. It's hitting 1,000 up and down. So yeah, FYI, it's one of my favorite little Stream Deck functions is being able to see my speed test at any given time. And right next to it's my CPU usage. So if you don't already have that and you have a Stream Deck, you might want a page for that.
Absolutely. Let's check in with the chat because I know there's a lot happening here. Hello to Saeed, who's joining us from Germany. Great to have your company. Insomnia Doodles is doing Team Live as well. She also says, I hope she feels better soon.
Yeah.
So Saeed says I love this comment. I hate that LinkedIn live streams don't start automatically. You have to press play like cavemen. It's funny because often I will get a warning that's starting soon, and I will go there and I'll be like, "What do you mean soon?" And then I'll go back to the invite and then realize it's 15 minutes away, and then have to come back again. But anyway, the internet is doing well. And Tanya Smith from Stream Like a Boss, thank you so much for joining us. I should say that Tanya was kind of the person that made me aware of Instagram Live Producer being rolled out more generally to people. And we had great fun exploring that yesterday. We do want to touch on that a little bit before we get into our main topic today. So I guess, Sam, you know, up until this point, some people had this functionality, but it was very, very much limited to a specific handful of people.
Yes.
I was almost going to buy an iPhone 15 to
just to
stream
Instagram
to
Live.
Instagram because I was just annoyed by my inability to do it properly. And now I won't have to do that. So I'm saving myself thousands of dollars at this point in time. So hello to Walt Strong from the Huddle as well, who's joining us there as well. But let's talk about it. So I'm not really even sure where to begin with this one, Sam, but obviously if you do have a professional account, it's important to keep in mind that you do need a professional account on Instagram, but that's pretty much just finding a setting and changing that in the background. Yeah. You can now live stream to LinkedIn via some of our more traditional tools, things like OBS Studio, Ecamm Live, StreamYard, Restream, OneStream Live, like all of these things are sort of getting on board. Some of the functionality is a little bit different from place to place. But I guess one thing I do want to draw people's attention to before we get into how to stream is just to let you know that these
really quick
won't
note,
be saved.
John said LinkedIn and he meant Instagram, obviously.
Yes, sorry. John. No worries. So one of the things I just want to mention is that these LinkedIn Live, I keep saying it, Instagram Live. I'm not used to Instagram Live. So Instagram Live will not be saved automatically unless you go to your phone app and turn on these settings. So you can go to archiving and downloading and then save live to archive. So make sure you turn that one if you want that. But again, that has to happen on the phone end of things. Given that you will be using... Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to say, so yeah, if that's not clear, when you're doing an Instagram Live from your phone, you are actually given the option to sort of save and post that live immediately as its own post. If you do it through desktop or StreamYard or Restream or any of these other things, OBS, any of those other things all count as desktop. So when you're done, and you're on the Instagram page where you have to click the go live and end live stream button, it's going to give you a thing that basically sounds like you're deleting this, unless you've already set that toggle, which will archive it, and then you can push it to post later.
Absolutely. I think I do have a little video about how this works. And again, because we're pretty OBS centric, it does demonstrate how to do this in OBS Studio with the Atom plugin. But the first handful of steps will apply no matter how you're doing this. So let's maybe just check that one out. Yeah. Instagram have rolled out their live producer options to more people. If you do have a professional account, you should have access to this now. So on desktop, if I go to create, I can select live video. I can give this a title and I will say testing Instagram Live. And we have the ability to choose a different audience. So you can go public or you can practice. In this case, I'm going to go public. I'll hit next. This will give me a stream URL and a stream key that I can copy and paste into my software of choice. So for today, I'm going to copy the stream key, and I'm actually using OBS Studio, which is the program that I usually use, and I haven't turned my camera on, so let me do that quickly. Okay, I've got my turn my lights on as well. There you go. You can see me a little bit better now. So I've actually got OBS Studio running here with just the traditional version and also the Atom plugin as well. So the Atom plugin is really great. I seem to already be streaming, so I'm going to turn that off. Basically, you do want to stream in a vertical format for this. So in this case, I'm going to come to the Atom vertical plugin options, the settings here. if I go over to the streaming tab, I can give this a name. I can paste the server information and I can paste the key in there as well. And I can go OK. Now, when I'm ready to go live, I can hit this button down here, which is stream all vertical outputs. I go back to Instagram and hopefully you'll see my preview over here eventually. Okay, the other thing that's probably worthwhile doing is actually muting your tab here, because otherwise you will hear yourself back and that's incredibly annoying. So I'm going to hit the go live button. And there is definitely a bit of a lag here. So just keep that in mind when you are going live on Instagram. This is literally the first time I've actually done this via this particular format. I haven't really told anybody I'm doing this, so I doubt we're going to have a lot in terms of chat, but I just wanted to take you through the options of doing this. So again, if you had a little bit more of an elaborate set over here in OBS Studio, you could switch to different scenes, you could toggle things on and off, you could change how everything looks. If maybe you want to get rid of the logo or bring in some other graphic, that's easy enough to do. But essentially, we click that button, we go live, and when we're done, we're happy with that, we can go to End Live Video. And here you'll see that to download your video, view this in your archive on the Instagram app. It's really important that you do this via the Instagram app. And there is a setting that you probably want to make sure that you have switched on. I think it's called Save Live to Archive. But basically, from this screen, you want to close out of here, discard this video, but you do want to make sure if you need a recording of this that you've got that set up already on your app. But that said, if you are doing this through software, you can always additionally save it via here as well. So again, I have an option just to record a version of this locally as well if I wanted to do that. So let's stop, and there we go. That's basically how this works.
So yeah, I think John hit everything really well on there. The one thing I want to or two things I want to reinforce is, the lag. The delay from when you start to when Instagram pushes it is weirdly long. We did this on the kitten cam, and within just a couple of hours, that delay was over a minute, which is unfathomable if you're trying to hold a conversation for like a live one-on community chat kind of thing, which potentially we were going to use it for. We'll see how that goes. The other thing I did notice, and the test that I ran was through Restream, it was considerably down-resed. Like, it did not look amazing. So I am doing this stream right now on the Sam Proof Instagram. You could take a look at it and compare and just see how things are different. Like, it's not just this squished down to vertical. It is its own thing, because I did what John did, which is use the ATEM plugin for vertical. So it is specifically in a vertical format. And actually, now that I look at it right now, maybe that's just an old monitor, but yeah, it's a lower resolution for sure. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
And again, I think if you like, it just depends on your goals. And I have a feeling that in the short term, it's really just going to be about hanging out and chatting with people in real time and building relationships rather than producing super high quality content. But if you are interested in sort of repurposing that content to the extent that you're able to, and you really can in all of these tools, have some sort of local recording that will be higher quality than what we're seeing out of Instagram. So absolutely keep that in mind. Walter has a great question. So you do need a professional creator mode account. So,
yes.
And again, I'm not a huge Instagram expert by any stretch of the imagination. So it's really important to go into the settings, turn this on. There are all kinds of options, and like my Instagram account is actually set up as a website, because I think at the time I did that, which was years and years ago. I created it's really just a page. It's a Facebook page and a link to Instagram profile that are linked together, and they were just really about promoting the content on my website. So I don't really know of any, just to head into a second question from Walter, I'm not really aware of any like any downsides to doing that. There might be some. I'm just really not aware, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
So yeah, I mean, it's something you might just want to play with. And I guess that's the thing I said to Sam earlier today. Like, I don't think Instagram is going to be the new home base for me, but I've really enjoyed playing with it and just experimenting in that vertical format. So one thing we do probably need to acknowledge, though, is that this is a brand new feature for most people.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, streaming product companies, are running to catch up. Some are doing a better job than others. If you go into Restream Studio, you can actually have a vertical layout. But what we are seeing on StreamYard is they are just taking the horizontal video and putting it in the middle of a vertical frame.
Yeah,
so
that's not great.
That's not ideal, but again, it's early days. I'm sure they will make changes to that moving forward. So just keep an eye on it. Again, as Tanya, I just want to call out Tanya because she's such a legend when it comes to all of this. But her big thing was, if you're doing this for your business, does it actually match your business goals? Are your audience there? They may be, they may not be. As people that just love tools and technology, we do like to play, and I will continue to play. And if I learn things, I will certainly share those with you. And hello to CG, who's joining us in the chat as well. Great to have your company. What Tanya is saying about the personal to business is interesting. And again, it's not an area I know a great deal about, but she writes, switching can mess you with your algorithm and what you see a bit. I noticed that when moving from personal to business and then creator mode.
Good to know. I will say that as far as like Restream and StreamYard doing it, and even doing this through OBS, the one thing you do need to keep in mind is this is not an API connection. It is really just a glorified custom RTMP connection. Instagram creates new stream keys for every stream, and those stream keys, I believe, only live for 5 hours. So if you don't use it in that 5 hours, you're going to need to generate a new one. You end that stream, you're going to generate a new one. So you're going to be constantly updating whatever streaming software you're using if you're using a desktop solution. And that's just the way it is at this time until they create some kind of API connection.
Absolutely. And I guess the other thing that's worth underlying at this point in time is you can't really access those chat comments in any meaningful sense in any particular software. I have heard rumors about it maybe being available to Social Stream Ninja, but I couldn't make it work yesterday.
I have not seen anything come through that. Walter's over on Instagram. If he wants to drop a comment in, I'll see if it's Social Stream Ninja brings it up. But from what I saw in the kitten cam, that did not happen.
Yeah. So again, it's in some ways I think it's early days. We don't want to judge it prematurely, but it's interesting, and we're sort of really interested to see how that plays out moving forward. Again, if you're interested in exploring it, go for it. You don't have a lot to lose, potentially outside of maybe that change to a professional account that Tanya alluded to. And if you are worried about that in particular, feel free just to set up a new Instagram account and just to experiment with and play with. So my big thing is there's so much new shiny things out there all the time.
Right.
Don't make yourself feel bad if you don't want to play with them, or you just don't have time or energy. So let's not worry about that too much.
My final thought on this, and my gut instinct after doing this one time with the cute avalanche thing, is that I don't see a lot of discovery pointing to live. You don't randomly see live streams on Instagram that you don't know. So this is pretty much something that's going out to people that are already following you. And I would not look at this as a growth tool so much as a community management style tool, where it's like, this is something I can do to the people that know who I am already, and keep that in mind.
And I guess that's the thing, at the top of the Instagram screen, whether you're doing this on desktop or mobile, the section where you sort of click to see reels is where people
Yes.
will be advised that you've gone live. So if they are just browsing, I mean, that sort of brings you to the beginning of that particular list. But again, they already need to be following you. So
Right.
yeah,
It will put a circle around your avatar on any of your posts, wherever those show up. So theoretically, there's a little bit of discovery there. But again, it's very small.
sure. Okay, well let's just watch that space. But again, it has been a fun thing to play with. But let's get into the main content of this week's show. We're talking all about preparing your live stream show, and you know, some of the things that might help create a better experience for you. And I guess, you know, there's nothing inherently wrong with just clicking the button and going live and just chatting with your friends, but I kind of want something that's a bit more of a focused experience. So I really want to know ahead of time what you'll be talking about, whether it relates to me, whether I'll even be awake, because that's the joy of time zones. A lot of the time, these things are happening when I'm asleep, and I need my sleep. So, you know, that's sort of a given. But I guess, you know, if we talk about, maybe before we talk about individual episodes, Sam, if we talk about, you know, some of the things we should consider about a show more generally, what are some of the things that you think people need to really think about before, you know, launching a new live streaming show?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think there's a lot of time and effort that can come into just figuring that out, whether it's, you know, creating a list of ideas or like actually researching a concept you have and seeing if like there's a better way to angle that to your specific community and their needs. And sorry, I was reading Saeed's thing. Interesting. Sure. So yeah, Saeed, just because it caught my eyes, asked, "Do you rehearse sessions like this?" At this point, no. John and I don't really rehearse. We have a quick powwow before the show, like super pre-production, like 5 minutes, let's go kind of thing. But along those lines, we do create like a show run document, so we know, you know, what's going to happen in our 4 tabs that you've all come accustomed to seeing. So that's the rehearsal for us. When I did, you know, this on a corporate level for like Fox Entertainment or anything, we definitely 100% did full-on rehearsals that were like beat by beat, minute by minute. Like, might as well have just been reading the entire thing out. But yeah, I think that depends on your own wants and needs and like just time. Like, I don't think we have the time to be like, yeah, we're going to do, you know, a 40-minute version of this and then we'll get into the real thing the next day or, you know, whatever.
I should say I haven't been able to get Sam to commit to this yet, but given that the Instagram live stuff is all happening, I kind of want to do a mini vertical version of the show in addition to this one. So maybe in some ways this is the dress rehearsal, but
Yeah, maybe.
I guess, you know, when it comes to thinking about your show, you know, what is it actually about? And I know
Yes.
I'm going to upset some people here, but I know some people that are like, we're just going to talk about really cool stuff with really cool people. And I'm like, your show's about nothing. Like, I really need
What is this, some kind of
context.
Seinfeld?
Yes, indeed. It's really worthwhile to know what it's about and who is your audience and what are they looking for? What are their pain points? And, you know, how can you actually help them? But I guess the other thing too, I think it's really useful to think about constraints, and some of these constraints will be, you know, imposed upon you by the tools and technology you use. But I think it's worthwhile making some choices yourself. So whether that could be how often you go live, how long your show is, the kind of segments that you have in the show, the rituals you have within the show, I think it's really useful in terms of setting some expectations within your audience, but also just giving you a sense of where you're going and what kind of deliverables you need to have ready for the show. And I guess one thing that we have, you know, spoken about on previous shows is, you know, if you don't know what to talk about, first of all, ask your audience.
Yep.
Ask them what they're doing, what they're dealing with, what they're struggling with. But especially if you're new and you don't really have an audience yet, there are some other tools that we do recommend. Also, Asked is a great tool, and it does have a free version. You can go on and sort of type in the topic that you want to refer to, and it'll give you a bunch of questions that relate to that topic that people are searching for. In a similar vein, there's also Answer the Public. One of the ones that is really cool, and I never feel like I've explored it to its full potential, is YouTube Studio Research tab. So this will sort of, it's sort of, and again, I have no great insight into how it works, but I'll tell you what it does. It sort of looks at the topics that you can search for a particular topic. It'll tell you the things people are looking for, but it'll also, and again, I have no insight into how this works, but it also looks at your own content and goes, hey, you're missing something about this. So for me, I make a lot of content about OBS Studio. It's told me in the past that you've done a lot of great OBS content, but what is missing is how to download and install OBS Studio. And it's amazing, if your destination is YouTube, if that's where you're trying to build an audience, those kinds of insights are really, really powerful.
Sure. Yeah, I think just to expand on sort of the ask your audience thing, not just like I'm already doing a live stream and I go, hey, how many people out there want to see us do more stuff on OBS? But there are just a million places you can poll. We already talked about, doing, spreading out to different platforms and everything. But and grabbing eyeballs that wouldn't normally see you, like in the case of the Instagram Live, where it's people that are following you there that might not catch you when you're live on YouTube. But you can do polls on like LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, and you can run those same polls because you're going to get a different sample of people. So yeah, utilize all of those tools. Again, don't go crazy and burn out doing polls and stuff, but whichever one you think you actually have a decent amount of audience to respond to.
And I guess the other thing too, like it's not uncommon for people to send me a direct message asking about something really specific. And if I'm going to take the time to answer their question, I might as well share that with the world. Obviously don't reveal any of their personal information, but if they want to know how to do something and I make a short video, then, there's nothing to be gained by hoarding and, hiding that information, I don't think. So, however you want to do that, we'll talk in a moment in the next segment about how to organize, the content calendar and the show run document and all that good stuff in just a moment.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. Mm-hmm. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Sam's podcast, Just Kidding Around, which you can learn more about over at cuteavalanche.com. This is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about planning your live stream show and how to get organized. I've got a great question from Sayed, but I think I'll come back to that one in the last segment because I think it'll be most useful there. But I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that that's there, and we will definitely come back to it. But I guess in terms of actually organizing your show and organizing your the discussions, the individual episodes that you're potentially having, Sam, you alluded to the fact that we have pretty informal post-show meetings about the things that we want to cover in future episodes. And the one thing I would say about that is it's often not a good idea for us to have those after an hour of talking to the internet because we're pretty brain dead at that point in time. But it's worthwhile sort of thinking about, the kinds of things that you want to address and when they might happen, because I guess the other part of this is to have a content calendar. So if you know that you have specific things coming up, whether that's in terms of, your professional services or a business or, in Sam's case for Cute Avalanche, actually being able to tie your content to those things and having different calls to action, in there as well that can be a really, really useful thing to do. But I guess, Sam, let's talk about content calendars and things. I don't know if this is the time you want to share the lovely thing that you've got.
Yes, so I'll bring that down in a minute. I was going to say, these can take any form really, which is like as simple as just like a shared doc where you have a list of topics or something like that, or a straight out Google Calendar, which I do use for Qt Avalanche for certain amounts of content creation, like one that's just available to me and one that's more public. Which also then doubles as a booking tool along the lines of Calendly. They recently did that. So if you are doing something where you're inviting on guests and stuff, you can have that there, and they won't see what you're working on, but they'll see when you're available, which is great. And then what John was alluding to is in our case, for this particular show, what's the thing I want? This one, I have this Trello, which is my workflow. So I, kind of start off on this column on the left, which is our ideas. And it's just random things like if I had an idea like, oh yeah, maybe we'll do a show on the new Instagram live stuff. Boom, make a new card. And I have a template. I just go into that template. I create a new card from the template, and it copies over all of my pre-created checklists, which I'm not going to get into because if you saw them, you would be like, oh my God, it's over 200 items, because it is. But yeah, just going down the columns, we go from just ideas to a sort of research phase where maybe we go into answer the public to try and find different topics within that topic, like different questions to answer and stuff like that. And then I take it into pre-production, which is like, boom, this week right before the show gets going, I'll start doing certain pre-production things. We'll create like our show run document. We'll create the show inside of StreamYard. We'll start gathering assets and things like that. Any kind of graphics that we might need, changing these tabs, or all sorts of things like that. And to some extent, there will be some sort of promotion in that state. And then we go into production. Let me just drag our card over here since we're live. That's today's show. And then there are a few sort of last minute things right before production, like start recording, like things like that, and whatever else it is. Open all the chat windows for me. Make sure YouTube is, going to do the live chat replay. Make sure StreamYard's going to record, things like that. And then we move it into post-production, where I download all of the videos so that I can get it ready for podcast and do trimming and stuff like that. And then finally it goes into sort of a social and promotion column. And that's what keeps my workflow going. It keeps us on task with our content and stuff like that. So if I knew how to make my Trello available to other people, I would share this. I have not figured that out yet. But maybe if there's enough interest, I can create that. There's actually more columns in this particular Trello, but those are the ones you need.
Sure. And I actually kind of want to take a step back because I feel like there are three threads within what you just described.
Yes.
And one is just capturing inputs. So if you see an interesting article, if you learn something new and you just want to capture it somewhere, and again, whatever kind of tools you decide to use, as long as they work for you, please, you have our blessing. Just roll with them. Don't obsess about the tools too much. But the idea is that you want to capture those things. You want to know where they are. You want to be able to find them relatively easily. Again, whether that's search or whether you have a particular structure of looking for those things. But two, we want to actually, so, that includes ideas for show episodes, essentially. Two, we want to actually organize some of those things. So, and I think that's where we come back to things like the content calendar, because it's, it's really important to schedule things. And, we do that in terms of our planning, but also in terms of literally scheduling things in tools for social media platforms. And that's what Sayed's question relates to, which we'll get to a little bit later. But it's, it's great to see, like, where you're going this month, or, 3 months or 6 months or an entire year, and sort of see the pattern that your audience can enjoy. But then, we want to get a little bit more granular for particular episodes. And Sam did mention the fact that we do have show notes. Again, some weeks these are incredibly elaborate, and sometimes they're like 3 dot points. It just depends, because life is busy, let's be real.
Yeah.
This one, for example, that I'm putting on the screen right now is from our episode about LinkedIn with Michelle J. Raymond. In this case, there's actually a lot of notes. This is a lot more than we normally include, but there was very specific things that I wanted to have here. I wanted to actually make sure I had the full names of her books in front of me, and just a reminder of who her collaborators were. Again, Sam didn't really know her as well as I did, so I kind of wanted to set him up to ask some questions here as well. But essentially, for this show, we have 4 main segments for any given show. We have a welcome and a goodbye segment, and we do break those up with promos, like the one you just saw for Cute Avalanche. We've had questions about those in the past too, and in some level, we just want people to learn more about our other projects. But the other nice thing about this, practically, is having pre-recorded material gives you a moment to press a button, grab a sip of water, catch your breath. Like, it's really, really functionally useful. The way we work in StreamYard is I'll also switch backgrounds, so we move to the next segment, and I'm probably lining something up for a banner as well. So that in itself is really, really quite useful. So I guess we'll talk about the assets more in the next segment, Sam, but is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
No, the only thing I was going to say is it also gives you a good opportunity to get all that coughing out that you've been holding back for like the last 2 minutes, which I just did in that last segment. Yeah.
It is one of those unfortunate things that the minute you go live, that's when you'll have to cough or sneeze. Or we've had shows where my eye will just start watering for no apparent reason, and it's you've got to roll with the punches when it comes to live. So we'll come back and talk about sort of collating some of our assets more in just a moment.
When we wrote the LinkedIn branding book, Michelle Griffin and I, when we wrote that together, we started with mindset. And in that, we came up with almost 28 fears of why people don't want to put themselves out there. And that fear is really real for people and holds them back in so many ways. And introverts and extroverts, and it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or back at the beginning, it's been really interesting. And we started with it because we figured if you can't get in that right mindset, the rest of it doesn't happen. And, people were like, mindset, branding, how do those two things go together? Well, if you don't have the right mindset, you won't put yourself out there. You won't create content. You won't send someone a direct message. You won't comment. There were so many stepping stones that came after it. And so it's probably the most popular chapter in the whole book that people always comment on. They always can see themselves in some of those fears, and we've all got them. I still have them. I'm worried that people are judging me just like everybody else. But at the same time, like we just said, that whole cliche, as our friends in the US will say, it's all about, why am I doing this? And I have to just keep coming back to, what does it look and feel like for the person on the other side when they have that light bulb moment? Like, that's what I'm doing this stuff for. And if I can keep focused on that, the rest of it will sort itself out. But for others, when you're still trying to figure out what is that thing, it becomes around, what are people thinking, and what are they going to judge me, and what are they going to say about whatever I post? And honestly, no one cares. For as much content as I put out there, I'd be crazy to think that actually, people care about it as much as what I do. They just don't pay that much attention.
And that's Michelle J. Raymond on my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can hear about more over at johnlacey.com. I should say too, next week on the show, we're talking about helping would-be streamers get over their procrastination and their fear and their concerns about the gear. And I think mindset is a really important part of that. So we'll discuss that more on next week's show. But this is the video and live streaming show. Today we're talking all about actually planning and producing your live stream show. And let's talk about assets. So again, your stream can be as simple or as elaborate as you decide it needs to be, but it can be quite useful to have some assets, in terms of the show itself and also for individual episodes. And it could be things like the intro and the outro. It could be brand colors and logos and branding elements. It could be calls to actions, banners and QR codes or overlays. in some ways, Sam, I don't think it really matters how you create these things as long as they end up in the format that you need for your particular software. But how do you think we should think about creating and using assets in a live stream generally?
Yeah, I mean, I think with this, you need to really isolate what platform is the one you are really building all of these things for, because we talk often about multi-streaming to different platforms and, you know, how that's great in the sense of you can try and bring in new eyeballs, but you can't build the same stream for Twitch as you can for Instagram Live, as you can for like live.space or any of those things. They're all just different, right? So you're going to have to sort of hunker down and go, this is the main one. And then maybe if I have time and energy to make a second focal point, great, fine, you can do that. But pick that out first so that you can spend your time working on sort of a style guide that then makes a cohesive jump between that platform and your brand, because those are going to be their own thing, you know? So finding fonts that work. And I like to keep it simple. I don't go serifed. I like these sort of, you have what we have here. The sans serif fonts are very bold, very clear, and easy. You know, I go a little thicker probably than I think John chooses, maybe, just because that's me. But yeah, I don't go with crazy fonts, nothing swirly, nothing hard to see, because if it is on a mobile, and a lot of these platforms, Twitch and YouTube, have both desktop and mobile versions, so you're going to get 50% of your viewers coming in at mobile being like, well, can't read that, but is it important? Maybe not. So if it is important, make sure they can be read on mobile. You know, there's... Go ahead. I see you.
I'm trying not to go on a complete rant, but font choice is really, really important. And
I obsess over
it's
it.
amazing how many people prioritize fanciness over readability. And I can't recommend that ever. I guess the other thing that's worth, you know, obviously this show is a collaboration between Sam and myself, and we both have our own sort of branding sensibilities and visual aesthetic things. And a lot of the times what you're seeing on the stream is often things I'm imposing on Sam because I'm the one that's creating them in the first place. So sometimes, and often this just depends on whether he's got time or energy, because we all live very busy lives. Sometimes he'll do his own versions of thumbnails and things like that as well. So again, it just depends on, you know, what your goals are. Because at the end of the day, if your content is good, you don't necessarily need to add a whole lot of production elements, but they can be quite useful and they can be visually rewarding. We'll talk about the tabs in a little bit, but I guess before we do that, and I feel oddly compelled to press another button because we did talk about calls to action ever so briefly, but I've got to scroll up and find it. You know, we can, you know, we've created overlays for this stream that, you know, we've got our websites, johnlacey.com and samproof.tv with QR codes. So if you are near your phone, you can scan those and go to those websites. But again, I don't know how conscious people watching this may have been by the fact that, you know, we spoke about Instagram Live and we had Instagram Live, you know, overlays. And I think I even had one that I didn't show, which was sort of this one here. Which is just a screenshot of a LinkedIn Live article that I created, which basically takes you through those same shots there. So again, if you can show people, it can be a nice visual disruption. So, you know, for I'd say probably 90% of our show, it's just us side by side talking. And I think that's fine. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But if you do want to switch up the layout, or you do want to sort of show people something you're talking about that you don't physically have in your hands, that can be really, really nice to do as well.
I think when it comes to live, you know, we're not making a Mr. Beast video where every 3 seconds it's a new angle and a new thing and all of these, you know, hero's journey sort of rules apply. This is a long-term conversation that we're having. You know, we're here for an hour. Nobody wants to sit there pressing a new button every 2.5 seconds to get to the next camera angle and setup. And that, I think, for that long, for this format, would be almost jarring. So yeah, I think wholeheartedly that with live, you want to just create the guide, right? And be like, this is what everything is. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. We're going to have these tabs. We're going to change 4 things every show, and is the name of those tabs. Everything else is the same. We don't need to have anything else to do the show. The 2 of us, 4 tabs, we're good. Sometimes we do have screenshots or screen shares, anything like that, and that's great. That's golden. It's bonus. But we're not trying to like make it super fancy every time, and I think that would just put too much work on your plate for this format. And that being said, when you are doing something where you know you're going to have a reoccurring segment, set it up in a Canva or an Adobe Illustrator or a Photoshop thing, or John uses, what is it, PowerPoint?
I do, yes, yep.
Yeah. And then you're just
going
to
talk about that. So one of my weirdest quirks is that I use Microsoft PowerPoint not usually to create slides, not usually to create documents, but purely as a graphics tool. And if you already have the Microsoft Office suite, you probably have access to this. It takes a little bit of a learning curve just to find out where different things are. But let's talk about the tabs. So again, you can literally see the tabs. I'm just going to throw up a screenshot from another show where we had Michelle J. Raymond with us. They're graphics, they're backgrounds. I create these in Microsoft PowerPoint. I have a template. The thing I love about Microsoft PowerPoint is because every slide is its own little individual canvas, I can duplicate these. I can make changes to these texts and just export each image as itself. But I do also, and I'll show you this in the next segment, I literally create all the video thumbnails. I create the LinkedIn article images in there. Like, I do everything in there. And a lot of the times, and again, it's not exclusive to PowerPoint. Like in Illustrator and in Photoshop, you can duplicate artboards and you can have themes and variation. But I think for me, sometimes I will have a really definitive idea about what I want to have in my thumbnail. Other times I will duplicate it 3 or 4 times and keep playing around with it until I get to the final result. And I've got a sped up video that I'll show you in the next segment about that. But I guess the other thing too is, for us as people that stream about live streaming, sometimes it's just too difficult to show you in real time how to use the software we're using while we're using it. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's worthwhile just recording a video, playing that. Again, gives you a break from being actively live, and you can sort of go from there. So let's, I'm actually going to just show you this, this video in action. So this is literally earlier today. This is me trying to design next week's show's thumbnail. You'll see that I try a lot of different things and I undo them and get rid of them. I should say too, for the people that might be listening to this via the audio version of the podcast, there is some music in the background, but if you want to see this in action, you'll have to head over to YouTube or one of the destinations where we post this as a video. But Sam, if you've got nothing else to add, I'm going to hit that button.
Go for it.
And that was like 10 minutes sped up into 33 seconds. So nice. You can see that I tried a lot of things. I was really determined to try and make a stop sign in there somewhere, but it wouldn't work for me, so I gave up in the end. But, that's just and it's funny, and I've done entire shows on my love of PowerPoint. It's a really weird thing. People look at me like I'm crazy. But anyway, I guess in terms of actually promoting things, obviously it's worthwhile to create that thumbnail. So whatever that looks like, whatever tool you're using, Canva, Photoshop, Illustrator, like however you get there, it's all good. But just make sure that you've got something there that's visually interesting and sort of describes the content of your show. I want to head back to these comments that Saeed made earlier.
Cool.
So for LinkedIn, what is your experience on how far in advance should the live be published? This is a great question, and I don't really have any definitive information about this, but what I would say, my experience of this is I don't have a lot of reach in terms of the algorithm. So in some ways, it almost doesn't matter when I post. What is helpful on LinkedIn specifically, though, is I can go in and I can invite anybody that's connected to me to come to this.
Yep.
And the great thing about this, and Saeed actually says this in another comment, people, when they get this notification, they will just go accept whether they intend to be with you or not. And I know in some ways this might seem disappointing if someone says they're coming and they don't show up. But the great thing about that is the more people that accept, the more other people in their networks can potentially see that event coming up as well. So even if, and I've reached a point where I personally will accept a lot of things if I know the person, if I support them, even if I know I'm not going to be physically awake when it's happening, because I feel like that's sort of bringing it to other people's audiences. So that is sort of my big tip. And again, it's a fairly manual process to go to the event page and then go and find the people you want. You can actually filter by industry. And when you filter by industry, there is a select all option. Personally, I spend a little bit of time sort of choosing who I think would be relevant to come or not. But I guess for me, that's the first point about LinkedIn specifically. I know you don't do as much on LinkedIn, Sam, but do you have any thoughts on that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I pay more attention to like YouTube, which also has that sort of scheduling feature for live streams that a lot of other platforms don't. And I think, you know, it depends how often you're actually doing a stream. We're doing a weekly stream right now, so I like to have the next stream ready on the landing page before we've started this stream. So just over a week in advance. You know, whether or not that really moves the needle a whole hell of a lot, I can't say at this time. It's something that we more recently started doing, and we'll look back in a few months in the new year and see if we think that did anything. But I do like having it so that when the YouTube stream ends, it automatically forwards our viewers to that next stream, and they can be like, oh, there's the next one on Friday. I can just hit the notification bell now, hopefully. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say, you know, if you're doing things less scheduled, like you don't have a specific day that you're going for it and it's more random or haphazard, I would suggest 24 to 48 hours in advance at least.
And I guess for me, because, especially on LinkedIn, because the live stream, and again, for those that aren't familiar with the things I do over on LinkedIn, I will schedule this, and again, the time before we go live has varied a little bit in recent months, but at the moment, and this is all in Australian time, I try to schedule these things on Friday for the following Saturday. It doesn't always happen. It didn't happen this week. It was a little bit later. But the thing about that is I want to make sure that event is scheduled so I can talk about it in my Wednesday newsletter and actually link out to the YouTube version and the LinkedIn version. And I guess that's a really important thing is I would, you know, again, you do you, but I think there's a lot of power in showing up at the same time as much as is humanly possible on an ongoing basis. And just really briefly, this is only like a minute-long video, but I just want to show you how you can schedule a video in or an event in StreamYard. So we'll just watch this one really quickly. To schedule an event in StreamYard, let's click on the Create button. We'll go to Livestream. From here, we can select our destinations. We can add our title and description, which I've copied and pasted from earlier. We can click on Schedule for Later and specify the date and time. I can upload a thumbnail for my video. we can click on customize for each destination, which will let us adapt these things on the destinations we've chosen. So if we need to adjust the title or the description, we can do that. And then we can hit create live stream. And I guess the big thing, especially in terms of promoting the live stream, is the moment that it's set up somewhere, people now have the option to subscribe, to be notified. What that looks like varies from platform to platform, but conceptually you can start telling people, hey, this thing is coming up, we're going to be talking about this. If you want to be involved, subscribe, ring the bell for the notification, all of the things. And then you have the opportunity to either just promote that as a standalone event or maybe dig deeper into the content in the interests of promoting that. And again, I alluded to the fact I have this Learn live streaming newsletter over on LinkedIn. It's really, like, it really exists just to promote this show, but it does also give me the ability to go into the subject matter a little bit deeper. It helps me organize my thoughts ahead of actually doing the show. And I guess the other thing too, different people live on different platforms, and if they're comfortable somewhere, they don't necessarily want to go somewhere else. And some people just prefer reading to watching or listening. So I like to give people options. I think that can be really, really useful. Sam, just quickly, because we are running out of time, general advice about promoting things on social media. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, go crazy. Do as much as you can. Again, focus on one or two platforms. Like, see where the most of your interactive traffic is, where you get the most engagement, and put out I would say a minority of sort of self-promoting content where you're trying deliberately to get people to click on links. Like, you hunt, 1 to 10 of like, here's insight I have, and on the 10th one, it's like, go to this link, right? And then if you still have time at the end of the day, you can push that content to other platforms and see if you can build engagement there as well.
And I guess the thing, like, we've alluded to the fact that you might be building assets for your live stream, but any asset you've created can be used anywhere. So the minute I've got a video thumbnail, I'm using that to promote this in, reels and posts and different things. So that can be really useful. Again, let people know that your event's upcoming. Let people know when it's on, especially if your social media tools support scheduled posts. That can be really a great way of doing that up ahead of time, so you don't have to worry about it while you're doing the show. But also let people know about it after it's happened, because again, there should be a lot of value in the show, even if people aren't joining you live. So just let people know. I guess the thing that's always important to keep in mind with live streaming is that it happens at a particular time and date, and people might be asleep. They might not be able to join you. They might be at work. There are any number of reasons, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested in the content. And the fact that these things are recorded and live on in another format gives them the ability to time shift that and to enjoy that when they want to sort of explore that. So any final thoughts about any of this as we start to wrap up the show, Sam?
My biggest final thought is back to the beginning when we were talking about Instagram Live. I realize now, after the fact, that the way I've set it up, the Instagram experience of this is more of a behind the scenes, because my mic never gets muted on that side. So I'm sorry for all the people who heard me coughing.
Fair enough. So I guess, with all this said, you can do as much or as little as you feel is appropriate. And the thing I would probably encourage people to do is assess where you are and try to get good at what you're doing right now. And once you're comfortable with that, consider, developing the show further, adding more things in if you want to, if it makes sense to do so. Like, don't be completely overwhelmed. Obviously, each week in the show, we present a lot of ideas, but it's important that you sort of think about them and you choose to explore some and ignore others, even if it's just for the near future. But Sam, if people want to learn more about you and what's your content and all that good stuff, where can they go?
Yeah, head over to samproof.tv. You can find all of my social links in the top left there under my name, where you'll find me streaming on multiple platforms randomly, except for every Friday when I'm here with John at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is Los Angeles. And if you do choose to do the Instagram live thing, head over to my YouTube, youtube.com/samproof, and leave a comment on the archive of this video and let me know what your thoughts are, and maybe we'll take a revamped look at it later. And if you didn't hear about enough cats this stream, head over to cuteavalanche.com for our 24/7 cat cam, which not 24/7 on Instagram Live, but occasionally it'll be there. How about you, John?
And if you want to catch up with anything I'm doing, you can head over to johnlacey.com. Got a whole bunch of articles there and social media links at the bottom of those pages in the footer. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us this week on the show, and shout out to those that might be watching later on in the future. On next week's show, we're talking really to people that are sitting on the sidelines of live streaming that really want to get involved but haven't been able to do it yet. It might be the fear, it might be the gear, it could be the overwhelm. We're going to explore those things. We really want to focus on some ways that you can get started quickly and easily and just really get some practice in, especially if your goal was to start live streaming. We are getting to the end of the year. There's really no substitute for practice. So we're going to explore that on next week's show. So we'd love to enjoy your company then. But until then, have a great week and a great weekend. And we'll talk to you again soon.